Hello viewers, welcome to this series of lectures on NMR spectroscopy. The contents of this series of lectures is going to cover Unit 1 of CH302 course for BSc students. Today we will be talking about the introductory aspects of NMR spectroscopy. The session is planned as follows, that is, to begin with we will try to understand what is NMR spectroscopy. Thereafter we will talk about the importance of NMR spectroscopy in the context of structure determination, because that is the prime aim of an organic chemist. Thereafter, to understand the basics of that, to understand the origin of the spectroscopy here, so we will try to see what are the kind of nuclei which are active in NMR spectroscopy. Having done that, we will see that what are the properties of the nuclei which arise because of their nuclear spin, because that is a very special kind of nuclei we are going to make use of over there. Thereafter, we will see what is the consequence of placing such nuclei with I is equal to half in a magnetic field. And lastly, we will try to sum up what we do in today's session. Okay. So, with that kind of an outline, let us see what is NMR spectroscopy. NMR spectroscopy basically is a spectroscopic tool that exploits the magnetic properties of certain nuclei to decipher the structure and properties and dynamics of molecules. That is a very versatile, probably it will not be incorrect to say that probably it is the most versatile tool in the hands of organic chemists, because it provides a lot of information regarding the structure of molecules, and also it helps in studying the interaction between molecules. It is a very versatile tool. And what you find is that it has got very wide ranging applications, because that is the beauty of this particular technique, that is, we can deal with very small molecules like aspirin. The spectra is shown over there. We will learn to the meaning of these things later on, or maybe polymers like insulin is a protein, it is a small protein over there, or maybe to the extent that we can even think of the whole body being imagined there. MRI is the in thing nowadays. We are using, we are exploiting MRI into diagnostics in a very big way nowadays. So, all these things are based on NMR spectroscopy. The NMR is nuclear magnetic resonance. So, we will understand each one of them. What is the meaning of nuclear over there? What is the meaning of magnetic? What is the meaning of resonance? We will try to build on all these three things as we proceed. Let us see what is the importance of NMR spectroscopy. I have highlighted a few things there, but from an organic chemistry point of view or organic chemist perspective, it is very good technique, because it provides us the number of different types of NMR active nuclei which are being probed in a molecule. What it means is, now suppose I am looking at a molecule, and suppose I am trying to look at the proton, the proton nucleus over there, then I can find out from this that how many different types of protons are there in the molecule there. That is the meaning of the statement over here. Second possibility is, the second information that I get from NMR spectroscopy is that it provides me the relative number of each type of such active nuclei over there. That means, suppose there are 3 different types of nuclei, what is their relative ratio over there. Then it also provides us what is the chemical environment that we see in terms of chemical shift in the later sessions afterwards. Basically tells you that that different nuclei, I am talking about protons. So, the different protons which are there, what kind of chemical environment they are in, whether they are in electropositive environment or in electronegative environment, all those things can be deciphered from the spectrum. And another thing which can come up is that if you have got different kinds of protons or any 2 nuclei which are NMR active, if they are coupling, they are interacting with each other, that also is reflected into the spectrum. So, it is a very rich source of information for an organic chemist. Okay. Now, let us take some sample spectra here. This is a typical spectrum, it is a very low resolution spectrum of ethanol molecule. Now, what you see is, the point I wanted to bring home here is that what you are seeing, that there are 3 different peaks are coming there. This is one signal, another one, yet another one. Now, these 3 signals tell me that in the molecule of ethanol, there are 3 different types of protons, because it is a proton NMR, and that we can see from the molecule structure also, that is CH3, CH2, OH. So, there is one of the 3 protons of methyl group, 2 of methylene, 1 of OH there. And secondly, we also see from here is that if you look at this so called integral over here, this integral basically gives me the area under the peaks over there. So, this actually gives me the information regarding what is the relative ratio of them. So, what we see that this ratio is 1:2:3, and that we can very well see from here that it is 1:2:3. Now let's see another important point over there. Now we can take an isomer of same molecule here. Say it is dimethyl ether. Now because if both of them have got the same molecular formula C2H6O, but this spectrum tells me, if suppose I've given a liquid which is either ethanol or ether, I want to determine which was that. I just run the spectrum. If I get 3 peaks like this, I say it is ethanol and not ether. It's so versatile, such a useful technique over there. In this case, there will be only one kind of protons there. All the 6 of them will come together. We'll see why of it later on. So I should get only one signal here. I should get 3 signals. Since I'm getting 3 signals, I say this molecule is ethanol. So this is so useful over there. Let's move further. Let's look at another spectrum of ethanol here, what's called as high resolution spectrum. All these things we'll try to see later on. I'm just trying to give you an overview of things there. Now what you see is that in this case the spectrum looks slightly different. Again, there are 3 peaks here. This is one major peak there, second one, third one, but there's something more has happened there. The nature of spectrum has changed. So what you're seeing is that this peak here and this one, the two have interacted, because what you see is there is a splitting coming into picture. So this tells me that out of the 3 kinds of protons we had, 2 of them are interacting, 1 does not. And this also has ramifications in the context of the kind of interactivities we have between the protons and the significance of that. We'll come to that at a later stage. Okay. Now having said that, now let's come to what is the basis of NMR. The basis of NMR lies in Zeeman effect. Actually, Zeeman observed that when you put certain new isotopes into magnetic field, they give rise to multiple spin states. That means basically there's an energy level there, and if I put into the magnetic field, this splits up. That means there is a splitting of energy levels, and this splitting of energy levels is referred to as Zeeman effect. And this Zeeman effect is the one which is the basis for NMR. And the Zeeman effect for a given nucleus depends on its spin quantum number. So basically that is going to tell me that which nucleus can I look into NMR, which I cannot. So and that is determined in terms of its spin quantum number. So we have to understand first, to understand NMR, or rather to see that what kind of nuclei are going to give me NMR spectrum, I need to know what is their spin quantum number. And let's see how do we go about the spin quantum number of a given nucleus. Let's see, that means I can put the question differently, that is which nuclei are active in NMR. The types of nuclei which are active in NMR is determined by their spin, and the spin of the nuclei are determined in turn by their composition, because like we have got atomic structure, we have got nucleus, there are different shells wherein electrons are there. Similarly, nucleus also has got a structure wherein there are different kind of models for nucleus structure there. We are not getting into that, but what's important is that in the nucleus we know there are protons and neutrons. These are, again are arranged into different energy levels over there. So what is the composition and how are they distributed into that shells, that determines their spin quantum number. On that basis we can divide nuclei into 3 different types, and they happen to be, the first group happens to be where both Z and N are even. That means A is also even. Z actually is your atomic number, N is the number of neutrons in the nucleus, A is the mass number. So if you take certain nuclei of this kind, what you find is, so in this case all proton spins and the neutron spins are paired up. What it means is, in the nucleus structure, since what we have is we have got Z and N both are even here, and in the nucleus the spins of protons are paired separately, neutrons are paired separately over there. So since there are even number of protons, they all will be paired up, there won't be unpaired proton over there. Similarly, all neutron spins also will be paired up, there won't be any unpaired neutron there. As a consequence of that, the net nuclear spin quantum number I, which is the symbol for that, will be equal to 0. And such nuclei with I is equal to 0, they are not visible in NMR. That means we can't make use of them in NMR spectroscopy. And typically such nuclei are spherical, non-spinny nuclei, I is equal to 0, and the examples happen to be 12 carbon, 16 oxygen, 18 oxygen or 32 sulfur. All of them are the examples of the nuclei which are not active in NMR. And actually, in fact, in a way it's good, because if had carbon 12 been active, probably wouldn't have been able to make use of NMR, because carbon 12 is the major kind of isotope of carbon. Okay, we'll come to that maybe at a later stage. Now let's go to the group 2 here. The group 2 is where the nuclei with both Z and N are odd here. in this case A will become even. Now, if it so happens, then in such a nuclei we will have an odd number of unpaired protons and odd number of unpaired neutrons, because if you got odd number of protons, they will pair up, there will be some unpaired protons left out there. Similarly, unpaired neutrons will be left out there, and since they are pairing up individually, as a consequence of this, there will be net magnetic spin will be non-zero. Such nuclei are detectable by NMR, but they are not the kind of nuclei we are looking for, because they will be little more complicated, and the kind of spectra we will get will be not as easily usable as we normally have with the nuclei with I is equal to half. We will come to that. And the typical example for such nuclei are 2H, 10B and 14N. They are not used for NMR. Now, let us move on to the group 3, which is of interest to us. These are the nuclei with even Z and odd N, and the A happens to be odd, obviously. In such cases, what happens is you will have even number of proton spins will all paired up, and there will be odd number of unpaired neutrons. So, there will be something left out as neutron spins there, or the reverse will be true. That means, you will have unpaired spins either of protons or of neutrons, depending on whichever happens to be odd. And in such cases, the net nuclear magnetic spins would be an odd integral multiple of half. That means, if there is only one spin left out, it will be half. If there are some multiples of that, accordingly the spin will be multiple of half. Okay. Now, these are the nuclei which are detectable and useful in NMR, and typically such nuclei are spherical in shape and they are spinning, and they are having I is equal to half, and the example happened to be 1H, that is proton, 13C carbon 13 as it is called, or 15N or 19F or maybe 31P, and many more of them are there which can be made use of. But typically from organic chemistry point of view or organic chemist's perspective, these are nuclei of interest to us, primarily 1H and 30C. And what you see is such a nucleus will be spherical in shape and it will be spinning, because that is a property which is coming because I is equal to half. When I was 0, it was not spinning. Okay. Let us try to sum up what we have seen right now. We try to see is that if the number of protons happen to be even, neutrons are even, spin quantum number will be 0. If it is odd combination, it will be integral multiple 1, 2, 3 and so on and so forth. Even odd or odd even, these are the two of interest to us, because the net spin quantum number will be half integrals there, and out of all these, the ones with I is equal to half are the ones which are exploited for NMR spectroscopy. Okay. So, now we know that what is NMR spectroscopy, how is it useful, and also we know what kind of nuclei are going to give me the spectrum there. Okay. Let us move further. Let us move further there. What happens, suppose I take a nucleus with I is equal to half. So, what is the property of such a nuclei which makes it useful for us? Let us see. The property of that is, if a nucleus is spinning, it is executing a rotational motion like this, then it has an associated angular momentum that is given by symbol I here, shown it as bold over there, and of course, it is a vector quantity here. And this angular momentum is given, the magnitude of such angular momentum is given in terms of the following expression, where I, this is your angular momentum, and that happens to be equal to square root of I into I plus 1 h cross. H cross is the unit of angular momentum, and then this I happens to be nuclear spin quantum number. So, there are two I's I am using here. One is the nuclear spin quantum number, and this is the magnitude of angular momentum. So, both of them are similar symbols. So, please do not get confused on that. We have to be clear about one is magnitude, one is a quantum number there. Okay. If you have a spinning nucleus, which is a charged particle, if it is spinning, it has angular momentum, it is obvious. But since it is spinning charge, it also has a magnetic moment with this, and that is given by a symbol mu. And this magnetic moment, you have a spinning nucleus, has an angular momentum I, also has a magnetic moment mu, and then this mu happens to be proportional to the spin angular momentum I. That means, the magnitude of the magnetic moment which will be associated with the nucleus will be proportional to I, the spin quantum number, or spin angular momentum there. Okay. Let us see, that is given by the following expression, mu, that is the magnetic moment, is equal to GnE 2 MP I, where Gn happens to be nuclear G factor. It is a characteristic property of the nucleus. Every nucleus has a certain value of Gn, is a constant. Then E we know is a charge on the proton or the electron for that matter, and mp happens to be the mass of proton. So, all these things are constant here. So, basically it is a constant of proportionality there. And what we can see is that mu is equal to something called gamma I, where gamma is called as gyromagnetic ratio. That is a constant I was referring to. Okay. So, we have got a nucleus which is spinning, has an angular momentum, has an associated magnetic moment, and the magnetic moment is proportional to the angular momentum. We are so far here. Okay. Let us move further. Let us see what is the magnitude of magnetic moment we have got there, that we can straight away get by substituting the value for I, that is the magnitude of angular momentum there. So, when you substitute that, we get mu to be equal to gamma square root I into I plus 1. So, this is the magnitude of angular momentum there. Now, one more point we have to take note of here is, that is, since the nucleus happens to be having a positive charge on that, the mu, that is the magnetic moment, and I, the angular momentum, both of them point in the same direction. This is very, very important here, because even the electron has exactly similar kind of behavior, but in that case this I and mu point out in the opposite direction. So, that is very different consequences are there for that. We are not touching on, because that actually forms the basis for ESR, electron spin resonance spectroscopy, which is not in the preview over here, but for the sake of it I have just made a mention of it. Okay. Now, let us see the same expression little differently. What we do is, we have mu, we substitute for gamma over here, gamma is Gn E by 2 mp, and what we do is, we rearrange the formula in such a fashion that we can write this as Gn, and then this E and h cross by 2 mp we take together as a new constant called as mu n, and this is basically called, this mu n to be equal to E h cross by 2 mp is called as nuclear magneton. This is a unit for expressing magnetic dipole moments of the nuclei. So, when I use this expression here, then my value for mu, that is the magnitude of magnetic moment, happens to be equal to Gn square root of I into I plus 1 mu n. So, that is a unit we are trying to now use of there. So, this is a formula which we will be making use of. Okay. Now, if I just want to compute the value of nuclear magneton, that can be just done by substituting the value of E h cross 2 mass of proton. When I do that, this comes out to be 5.050 7 10 to the minus 27 joule per Tesla. Tesla is the unit for the magnetic field we are using there. Now, let us move further. Where have we come? We have started with what is NMR, what is the importance of NMR, then we talked about what kind of nuclei are going to be useful for me, and we realized that the nuclei which are useful for me are the ones for which I is equal to half, and such nuclei are spinning, they are spherical in shape, they are spinning, have an associated angular momentum, and since they are charged particle, also have an associated magnetic moment, and this magnetic moment is proportional to the angular momentum, and then we have been thereafter trying to work out an expression for the magnitude of magnetic moment for such a nucleus. Okay, we are so far here. Now, let us see, because when we are talking about spectroscopy, we are so used to spectroscopy that we know that in spectroscopy we need to have some kind of energy levels where the transitions can occur between them. So, we have not talked about any energy levels as yet. Let us see that how do we get these energy levels, and that actually can be seen in terms of the quantization of nuclear spin. Now, look at this this tiny that nucleus I am talking about actually acts as a tiny bar magnet. If I look at a kind of a spinning nucleus, it has an associated magnetic field the way it is shown over here, and if you see a similar field for a bar magnet, we find the two are similar. That means, in a way we can say that such a spherical nucleus which is spinning acts as a tiny bar magnet. Okay. Now, if I take number of such nuclei and take these tiny bar magnets, they will be randomly oriented, because if I take a sample of nuclei, so all nuclear spins are there, they are spinning, and their magnetic moments are oriented in all possible directions, they are randomly oriented. But the moment I put this material or this sample into a magnetic field, or I apply magnetic field onto such nuclei, then what happens? Then what happens is that these nuclei now align themselves. They align themselves in two possible ways. One, either they align with the field, with the field is like this, or they are aligning against the field. So there are only two possibilities now. In the absence of field, it was all orientations possible there. The moment you apply magnetic field, only two possibilities are there. And these two orientations, what's called as aligned with the field or against the field, they are the only two possibilities. So we say this spin magnetic moments are quantized in a way. We'll build more on this. Now let's try to compare this with a macroscopic particle, say a macroscopic compass. If you look at a compass needle, and this is just the whole globe is shown over here, and then what you see is if you go along with the magnetic compass over there, we find that this compass can take all possible orientations there. It is a macroscopic particle, but the tiny nuclei I am trying to look at, the nucleus with I is equal to half I am looking at, that actually is a quantum particle. As a consequence, what happens is it can take up only certain allowed orientations there. And what you find further, that nucleus with spin quantum number to be equal to I, we find that in the presence of magnetic field, it can assume 2I plus 1 orientations. And since I have chosen deliberately the nuclei with I is equal to half, there is a reason for that now, because when I have got I is equal to half, there are only two possibilities. That means I can have only two orientations possible, it is aligned with the field or against the field. And that is how do we see that. Actually, we do say colloquially that it is the spin which is aligned with the field or against the field. In fact, it is the z component of spin angular momentum which is quantized. I will talk a little more about it as we proceed little further. So if I look at the z component of this, will be mi h cross, where mi is the magnetic quantum number in the z dimension there. So this will come out to be, and we know that mi is, where I is equal to half, mi will be equal to plus minus half. So there are two possibilities for Iz, that is plus minus 1 by 2 h cross there. Now I just made a mention there, we do say that spins are they are aligned with or against the field, but in fact what happens is the nuclear spins actually are aligned at certain angle theta with, because this is z axis is my field direction, this B is the field here. So this is my field direction there. When I apply the magnetic field, this spins, there are two possibilities, one oriented like this, it is aligned with the spin with the field, this is aligned against the field. So at a certain angle theta is there. What you find is, say for I is equal to half, if I substitute the value of I is equal to half into that expression there, that mu is equal to square root gamma square root of I into I plus 1, that gives me root 3 by 2. Okay. So that means basically this magnetic moment here, the magnitude equal to 3 by 2 h cross. Okay. Now such a vector when oriented like this will be such that the projection of this on the z axis happens to be half h cross. So and that is what is quantized here. So this means it is plus half here, this is minus half on this orientation. So this is a z component which is kind of quantized there. That means the spins are aligned at a certain angle in such a way that a z component of that happens to be plus minus half h cross. Okay. I am just trying to use a few terms which probably may be sounding slightly difficult for you, but don't have to bother much about it. It's just the basic aspect of it, the mathematical foundation of that. But thereafter, when we come to the conceptual part of it, this is very straightforward and very useful to understand and make use of NMR. So you just bear with me for a few moments more on this little few equations which are important, but they should not be putting you off. Now let's see what are the corresponding values of mu z. If I just want to put over there, so it will be GNE 2mp was my gamma here and I is here. If I substitute the value of I, so I get the value of mu z to be equal to GNE by 2mp into minus half of h cross, that is for one orientation, and plus half h plus 1 by 2 h cross for the other orientation. So that gives me, if I substitute that E h cross by 2mp as my mu n, I get a very simple expression there, that is my mu z happens to be, this is my z component which is going to matter to me. So I want to have an expression for my z component of magnetic moment, and that comes out to be minus of 1 by 2 g n mu n and 1 by 2 g n mu n. So that is what I want you to bring home. There are two components there, the z components part of it. Okay. But I need to know what is the energy of the level I am talking about, and this energies can be worked out. Probably I can just show you schematically first that two spins are there. One is a spin half, that is the z component will be having, one is plus half, one is minus half. This is the positive one, this is the negative one. So, this is of low energy. This is called as an alpha state, and the spin which is aligned against the field with the spin component to be equal to minus half, and that is aligned against the field, it is called as a beta state there. Now, I was just mentioning about the energy part of it. Energy can be seen, depends on two things there, that is what is the z component of magnetic moment and what is the field there, because if the field is more, the interaction will be stronger, there will be more energy to that. And what you find is that that energy is equal to mu z into B naught. B naught is my magnetic field which has been applied there. So, if I just put the two together, substitute the value of mu z here, so it will be plus minus 1 by 2 G n mu n B naught. So, what you find is that energy of a level is proportional to the B naught applied field over there. We will come to that. Now, if we just put this in terms of energy level diagram, we find that, so this is my alpha state when Mi is equal to half. So, energy will be equal to minus of 1 by 2 G n mu n B naught, and this level has got energy of equal to 1 by 2 G n mu n B naught there. So, this is plus, this is minus. So, minus is lower energy. So, this is my alpha state, the lower energy level there. Okay. So, there are two energy levels I have been able to get as a consequence of putting my nucleus with I is equal to half into magnetic field there. So, there is a quantization coming into picture. Okay. As I just mentioned, if I look at the delta E value now, delta E value is the difference between the two energy levels there. So, this is the upper energy level, it is 1 by 2 G n mu n B naught minus that of the lower energy level. So, it just comes out to be G n mu n B naught, and that is a very simple expression for us. And what is important here is this delta E, that is the splitting which we have been able to achieve, is proportional to the applied field, that we can show schematically like this. That means, when there is no field there, delta E is 0. Both the spins are randomly rotated, they are degenerate. But the moment I apply field, we find that this the two energy levels are coming into existence there, and the energies, the delta E values will depend on what is the amount of field applied over there. So, field strength is increasing, so does the delta E value between the two energy states we have been able to get. What can happen is, we have got two energy levels now. So, we have used the delta E value is such that if I take EM radiation in the radio frequency region, and that has got enough energy to cause a transition from the lower level, that is alpha state, to the beta state, and such a transition is called as the spin flip. Okay. Now, let us sum up what we done today. What we done today is that we started by defining NMR spectroscopy as a spectroscopic tool that exploits the magnetic properties of certain nuclei to decipher the molecular structure and study the interaction between the molecules. Thereafter, we highlighted some of the importances of NMR spectroscopy, and then thereafter we came down to the basics aspect of NMR, that is to understand the NMR, the principle of NMR. We started by identifying the kind of nuclei which are active in NMR spectroscopy, and we realized that that the nuclei with I is equal to half are the ones of importance to me, and those nuclei, typical example happen to be 1H, 13C and 19F and 15N. So, they are the ones which are of interest to us. Thereafter, we discuss the properties which arise out of the nuclei having I is equal to half, and we realize that such nuclei with I is equal to half have an angular momentum, and as a consequence, since they are charged particles, they also have an associated magnetic moment. So, this nuclei with tiny, they act as tiny bar magnets, and the orientation of these bar magnets are random as such. But the moment I apply magnetic field to a system, we find that these nuclear spin start aligning themselves. They either align with the field or against the field. So, the alignment with the field is of low energy, the one against the field is of high energy. So, essentially we get two energy levels, and these two energy levels which we get are of interest to us. They are referred to as alpha and the beta energy levels there, and this energy gap is, the delta E value is such that we can use the EM radiation in the radio frequency range. They have got energy sufficient enough to cause the transition among these energy levels. That is why we got nuclear, that is the nuclei involved in there, magnetic because we are using a magnetic field over there. Resonance we will take up in the next session. We'll talk about the meaning of resonance at a later stage, maybe in the next session over there. Thank you.